Hello, Tommy. I keep my promise. I'm here. I keep my promise. I'm here. I'm trying to help you while you're here. Trying to help. If you'd like to say anything, the room is yours. The room is yours.
You are now watching Turn to Gold on BB3 TV with your host, the Ghost Boy, Chris Cesare.
Hey everybody, Chris Cesare here. Welcome to Turn to Gold. This is episode 32 of season 1, which is pretty amazing. I want to thank you and welcome you for being here tonight. The fall is approaching very quickly. It's only about another week away. The summer is waning, but I like this time of year. The leaves begin to turn from the bright greens to the soft yellows and the warming reds and the cool gold colors that often highlight the New England area, New York area for photographers and people walking in the woods and people who like just being alive and seeing the sights. I see this morning, I looked at the moons in the sky and I wondered as a kid, why is the moon in the sky in the daytime? Not understanding there are certain rules that have to dictate that's the way it works. It also reminded me of the time when my granddaughter was with me and I was pulling her in a wagon. She's about 2 years old and I taught her some of the sounds that animals make. You know, the dog goes ruff ruff and the cat goes meow. And so I'm pulling her in this wagon and she's outside and she begins to say moo moo. I thought, what? There's no cow here. Why is Sylvie making a cow mooing sound? I couldn't understand, So I said to her, no, so there's no cow, there's a dog over there, woof, moo. I'm like, why did she say? And she was pointing, I followed her finger to the moon. She hadn't seen the moon before. She'd seen it on cartoons and in books, but the moon was out in the daytime, in the early evening, and she got to see the moon, and she was fascinated by that. And I love the fact that young kids can see things for the first time and really appreciate them. Because how many times do we walk out into the moon and don't even look up? We just kind of, it's there. And yet this silent satellite just goes around and around and sees the creation of societies and civilizations and the fall of them and the advancement of humankind, lights popping one at a time with the invention of gas lanterns and then electric light and so forth. It's amazing. If you'd be in that Iraq, what you would see. And so it reminded me of the importance of trying to appreciate what you have in your life on a daily basis. And, I love things like that, as you know. And hi, Patty. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Styles' mom, you're the best. I really love you're here. Hi, Lori. Thank you. Thank you for being here a regular. I really appreciate that. I hope you enjoy what we're sharing, the conversations that we have. And hi, Barry. Hello. Welcome. It's always good to see you on here. I've known Barry for many years. He's a great human being, and I think he has the notorious record of seeing me speak the most. So it puts the pressure on me to always tell something a little bit different for him. And so I respect him, and he really is a positive person. And whenever he shows up in an event, Barry, he always brings some interesting stories to share, some observations, and he laughs at my jokes, which I appreciate. And hello, there's Vince out in California. Hello there, buddy. I appreciate you. You're a very good person. I'm proud to know you. I was glad to see you at Gettysburg, and thank you for meeting my friends. I think the world of you. So thank you for being here. And I was saying thank you. Thank you for being here. A very, very talented musician. And so thank you for being here, taking the time to say hello. And so here we are. Let me just go over a couple things really quick, and that is where I will be. Couple events left before I put a bit of a damper on my speaking schedule, prepare for other things. The first thing is this coming Saturday, I'm going to be at Summer Mansion in Norristown, Pennsylvania, and it's an event honoring Bill Freeman, who worked very hard for many years to preserve the Summer Mansion. And he passed away this past spring. Sometimes there's a person who you say to yourself, they're not going anywhere. They can't possibly go. There's too much energy, too much power, too much at stake. And then sometimes that's what happens. They go, and the cancer that consumed his body did not stop his spirit from remaining behind and inspiring all of us to do the right thing and to raise funds and to help and to keep his memory alive. So love you, Bill. Hope that you're finding rest up there, and maybe we'll get to speak again sometime, but hopefully not too soon. And then in October, my very last event before the year comes to a close, it's a Sleepy Hollow Paracon. I'm honored to be there. It's a lot of great guests. It's a location that is historic in nature. It's right there where Rushton Irving wrote The Legend of Sleepy Hollow with Ichabod Crane, Headless Horseman, and Rip Van Winkle. It's a beautiful location. A lot of very, very good quality speakers. And again, the full foliage will be in full bloom at that point in time. So if you're in the area, come on out, see the speakers, enjoy the area, walk the grounds. It's an event that I'm really looking forward to. And my last event for a while. 2023 for me is going to be a big change. I'm going to be doing some things a little bit different, and I want to make sure that I'm prepared for those things. I've always tried to take my job seriously, whatever it is being a friend, maybe trying to speak in public, being a school teacher, a runner. We all have limited abilities and gifts, but I always try to use mine to the best of my ability to help others and see if I can make a positive footprint, while I'm here. So welcome aboard, everybody. We have a great show this evening, and I love it when I can speak to people about things that I know about too. Sometimes a guest comes on and they have an experience that I have to learn as well about that with you as we listen to the conversation. In this case, I have three guests who are great friends, great longtime friends, and I love to share them with you. If you're a busy person, you work two jobs, or if you're raising a family, if you're trying to make ends meet going to college, you don't have time for 95 friends. You have to try to be the best you can, select those people who you give to and they give back to you. And so over the years, over the decades, I now have about 7 or 8 close friends, maybe 7. And most of them will be with me here tonight, speaking with you about things that we've experienced, things we shared. They're all very accomplished. That's cool. They're all very smart. That's cool. They're very creative. That's cool. But the coolest thing about them is they're all very nice. I really enjoy nice people. They all can tell you stories hours on end of things they've seen and explored and done. And I can talk to you about how good they've been over the year to people, how they help people, inspire people, and support people in all quiet ways you don't see, that we don't always see. And so I think the sign of a true friend is a person who's always there for you. And they're here for me tonight, and I really appreciate them. We're going to talk tonight in large about Valentine's Day 1985, and that was the evening that myself and Ed and Jeff and others took the photographs that have become iconic in terms of being known with, recognized with, the haunting in Geneseo Erie Hall. There are 2 that are particularly out there in force. One is the hands out photograph when the ghost is coming towards me. The other is the skeletal image of the ghost that I had taken when Jeff gave me his camera. So we're going to talk a little about why they were taken, how they were taken, our reaction to those things, and the journey we've all gone through to find those negatives, to display those, to show those concepts and events in film and literature and books. And so I'm very pleased to have them on. I'm going to bring them on one at a time. So that seems to be the sensible thing to do, and also matches my limited skill set in terms of using technology. So my first guest to bring on is a woman who is possibly the most talented person I know, and that's saying a lot. This individual and I worked together on an award-winning mod that is now published, is redone in German language and Russian language. It was a mod for the Elder Scrolls Oblivion PC called Etnarche Ego. She was the individual who directed and won an award for direction of the film Please Talk With Me, which was the first capture and collection of what happened to my friends and I in the Erie Hall in Geneseo back in '85. And she's an amazingly talented and gifted singer. Right now, she's working with an iconic '80s band, Modern English, on an album that's to be released next year. And I've had the privilege of hearing some of the tracks in advance. And you always want to support your friends. Her music is so good. She let me one time bring home one of the songs on a DVD, and it's a 4-hour ride from where they live to where I live. And I must have played that song 71 times. I loved it. And when I get back to my place, I just had to let her know how amazing the song was. It reminded me of, some of the songs that I listen to on the radio that are really good. And I thought, my gosh, I'm so honored that in a year or two from now, this will be playing on the radio on all these stations. And meantime, I'm in my car and no one knows about it yet, but I know it. As I'm driving home in the darkness, the stars over my head, I'm listening to these beautiful sounds and choruses and instrumentals. Just, man, I feel so lucky. So my first guest tonight, welcome please to my show, is Mara Katria. Hello.
Hi, Chris. What an amazing and huge honor for me, that introduction. Thank you for saying those things and feeling those things, and also talking about your family and the newness of the moon and how it struck her and how we see those things anew through them. That was beautiful.
Well, all true words, and my inspiration is beyond words I can express. So thank you for taking the time. I know you're working on finishing up the album. I know you're working on all these other projects at the same time. So I appreciate you taking the time for a friend.
My great pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I want to bring on another person that you know, Mara. This person was my suite mate in Erie Hall at Geneseo in C2D suite. And eventually, when my first roommate Paul left the scene because of the haunting, and with good reason, this individual moved into the room with me. He actually walked into the fire to help see me through it, and he's an individual who recorded and chronicled the events of the haunting, now called the C2D1 Journal, which have been used in the Sci-Fi School Spirit Show. It's used in a book written by Tim Shaw. It's been used by Travel Channel. It's used in Please Talk With Me. It is what is the backbone of the material that people have to consume regarding the haunting. Also, he was the photographer most of the images you're going to see, and the guiding light behind the capturing of those things. It was his idea to say, we probably should get some images, some evidence of these things happening to us, Chris, because we know it, we see it, we feel it, but people beyond us might not. And it'd be very helpful to be able to look back and say, yes, that happened, and here's why we know it happened. He was, during the time of the haunting, very stable. He was very emotionally strong. He was like the dock you can hitch your boat to, and amazing that he entered into my life as he did. The funny thing about it, too, is that we'd actually been in the same room at the same time about a year and a half before that. We both had taken this 3-year baccalaureate exam. And if you take this 6-hour exam and pass the 3 parts of it, you get to have your first year of college given to you free. You're in the credits. Pretty smart, right? And so, we didn't meet each other that day, but he was waiting to get into the test because usually he was early and I wasn't. And so he looked at the list of names being, taking the test. And I was on there. He said, Cesare. Sounds Latin. And so a year and a half later on, he was able to tell people, oh, yeah, I was in the room. He was there. So it's amazing that there are even little snippets of what to come foretelling things, before they even happen. So please welcome my battle buddy, Mr. Jeff Ungar. Hello, Jeff.
Hello, Chris. And perhaps our meeting tonight was also foretold, but this is cool.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. I love this. I love this. And it was through you, Jeff, that my third guest, the fourth person tonight, is on the show. He was a high school friend of yours. He was the first person that I shared my experience with. The first person who really wasn't there, who said, "Okay, this is my chance to see if I can share properly. This is my chance to make sure I can be understood by somebody who wasn't there, to find out if it's valuable to share, if it's safe to share." And the moment he walked in the room, I felt as though I found a brother, just very supportive, very bright, always thinking, always wondering about application, always trying to see, well, what does that mean, and how does it apply, and and how can that be shared beyond oneself? And that inspired me once I spoke to him, his reaction to share more, and there's something to be said about somebody believing in you, putting stock in you in a very tough moment. Very instrumental in terms of getting more things for you out there, the viewers, with this haunting. He was the person who tracked down Father Charles Manning, who tracked down my roommate Paul Anderson 9 years later, and talked to them and met them and had conversations that allowed us to know more of what happened to them. He was one of the first people to write down what this might have meant years ago in certain forms, and very good friend. He is a published author. He's a poet. He helps people all the time. I love him so much. And this is Mr. Alan Lewis. Hello.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Hi, Mara. Hi, Jeff. Hi, Chris.
Hey,
so
Alan.
Here we have it. All right. Now, the viewers might not know this, but 15 years ago, 20 years ago, we might get together, the four of us, for a little bit and have a pizza or something, talk about things, just talk about things in the hopes of understanding. We would talk sometimes about the weather like people do, talking about sometimes politics like people do sometimes, but eventually we got back to things of a nature be esoteric, talking about spirituality, talking about the paranormal, talking about the value, meaning of life, all these things. I don't think we could have known for sure at that point in time there would be what has happened. I mean, Jeff has always said, to his credit, it wants to be told, Chris. The story wants to be told. It will be told, and that's not. We're not going to stop it. We're going to go along for the ride the best we can, and we're going to actualize our legacy. What is our future? And it's worked that way. It's taken work, and there have been some obstacles, correct? But I think we all look back now and say, cool. So if I can, I want to go back to in this case, beginning in speaking about some of these images, and I'm going to share them in a few moments on the screen. So pardon me if I block my speakers myself for a few minutes, but when we talk about them, I want to show you what we're speaking about. And I have to kind of navigate how much is enough to show, how much is too much. I don't have to show the picture. So it's up there 25 minutes, so someone like give me a call. Same picture, Cesare. It's on there for 25 minutes. Same, nice picture, but 25, and then I'll give me the clue to move on. So I'll appreciate that. So we go back to February 14th, Valentine's Day, 1985. The haunting has been going on for a few days. It is about 2 weeks or so since Ed and Lorraine Warren came to the college and spoke to us about these classic hauntings with their EVPs, the playing of these sounds that they claim represented certain spirits or beings, and their slides of these certain haunted houses and colleges and of spirit images and form. And so here we are. I know now that something is in my room, and Paul has confirmed this already. I have now seen this thing appear in the room over my shoulder and looked as though it was ethereal. It looked like a real person I could see through parts of the body. We had heard it call my name Chris, and Paul had heard that, and I had heard that. And at this point in time, Jeff has said to himself and to me, I'm going to write things down. I want to see what's happening here. And Jeff, if you don't mind, talk a bit about how your childhood interest, which wasn't always confirmed when you're younger, was now being, once again, rekindled in these things.
I usually start off that question by saying that I had always been an armchair traveler, somebody who sits and reads about these faraway places, events, cool stuff, not really knowing how to actually participate in these things or have these grand adventures or experience, the wonders of the world and the mysteries. But I was always interested in the mysteries. I would probably relate to the author Colin Wilson, for example, who wrote about the occult and the paranormal very, very well during that period of time, actually in the late 70s. He had a book called Mysteries, and I remember just absolutely devouring that book. It was filled with anecdotes, and he kind of like synthesized all the evidences that were out there up until present day, and made very compelling arguments for the existence of some pretty incredible things. However, these were anecdotes. His research had unearthed, many, many compelling ideas and stories and whatnot. But it's not until it actually comes knocking at your own door or pounding on your door, as in the case with you, Chris, that you suddenly find yourself face to face with something like that. And so, going from a third person kind of speculative understanding of these things to being thrust into the midst of just a whirlwind of unknown and potentially malevolent frightness. I don't know what other word to use right now, but it was very quick, very fast. It was intense. And yes, as far as my interest in the subject, I did have an interest. I shared the interest with my dad. We used to watch things like In Search Of religiously. We'd watch Star Trek, of course. And, my dad was always, talking about the what ifs and what else is out there. And, I definitely shared that view.
Yeah. So it must have been maybe a mixture of shock, terror, excitement, when all of a sudden, as you say, someone comes pounding at your door and then it reveals to you, yeah, it's happening right here across that wall. Do you think that your armchair interest assisted you in getting involved, and without that, it might have been a different outcome, or is that just who you are as a person to be curious?
No, yeah, my interest definitely prepared me for this because I didn't have to do a double take about what, I didn't have to make a shift as much from my worldview as it was to something so left field as this, or right field, or whatever. It was like, okay, it's now time. It's like, wow, okay, let's do this. Let's do this right. Because I had a frustration building in me about wanting to know more information, but kind of powerless to know how to go about doing that. And so this opportunity suddenly thrust itself into into my lap here, and I think I was primed to investigate it with you.
I was fortunate that was the case. And Mara, did you have a similar interest in things esoteric, paranormal as a child, or no?
Interest. Well, I would say that my interest was in things of a fantastical nature. So I loved things like The Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit or The Chronicles of Narnia, that sort of thing. Reading those books, thinking about magic, thinking about big picture things like life after death, sure. As far as interest in the paranormal, I was very scared as a child of the idea of things like ghosts or the malevolent. And I think people who knew me when I was young can attest to the idea that I was, I think, pretty literally not sleeping when I was, the age of, say, 6 to 14, 15, maybe even later than that, where I would wait until the sun came up so I could go to bed, because I'd be thinking about that sort of, what could happen, who could be watching, what could be out there. I had very, very vivid dreams and that sort of thing. So I would say I was interested, but I was interested in a very respectful and hesitant way with regard to the idea of the paranormal. And in a way, it's interesting that, my life brings me around to that topic, because it's not something I necessarily would have pursued, except the story of the C2D1 haunting. You, Chris, Jeff, the people involved, like Alan, researching it, really enriches it as a human experience, and it feels like something I can't turn aside from. It's too important to run from or ignore. So yeah, a mixture of interest and hesitation, fear, and respect.
I have that now. I didn't have any problem sleeping before the haunting, but now later in my life, I don't like to go to sleep until the sun is up, and that's problematic with my job, my career. But that's just the way it works too. So I understand very much what you're saying. And Alan, we're going to get to in a little while on your first viewing of that photograph and your interest and response to seeing that. It's like almost a call to action or understanding. But as a child, did you have an interest in the paranormal or things of that nature?
Yes, very definitely. I remember reading ghost stories when I was in elementary school, and true stories. And I went through a period where I wasn't sure if it was true as I got older, but I did, as I get older, have a very intense interest in psychic phenomena and all things of that nature. And the idea that it, in the culture back then, there wasn't a lot of places it was being talked about, as it wasn't respected. It didn't seem to be an accepted idea anywhere that I was encountering it. And I remember this very powerful sensation that there was so much mystery to be uncovered and things going on in the world underneath what we saw. And most of us were missing it. And I didn't want to miss it. And I didn't know. And I remember not knowing how to stop missing out on what's really going on, that type of feeling.
That's fascinating. So in different ways, at different times in our life, it seems like all of us at one point felt there was something out there. We all kind of felt there is something to fear, to wonder about, to explore. That's a fascinating thing. And maybe our third roundtable, we can maybe in the winter time, we can talk about, does that concern, that interest, that predisposition help or hinder one in looking at these things, and is it required? I mean, does someone need to have a quiet awareness, a subliminal awareness of these things to experience those things, and maybe learning about them opens one's mind, maybe reading about it, maybe hearing something, maybe there's a trigger that kind of snaps open, like the first time you have chocolate, like, oh my goodness, this is pretty good. if you have it, you know what it is. Once you have it, you're like, all right, I'll have some more of that, please. Yeah, so thank you. I appreciate you sharing about the background for you. And now we go to Valentine's Day. You know, and I should point out, it's there's that saying, but I'm gonna say anyway, that both Jeff and I are Valentine's Day without dates. So we're in this college room with a ghost. Choices are choices. And so Jeff has said to me, it's important. I'd like you to be in this room with me and to get evidence for the ghost. And if I recall correctly, I wasn't gung ho about the idea. Do you remember, Jeff, how that worked? I did eventually agree to go with you. We went in the room, but do you recall my state of mind or what was going on back then? We walked into that room.
Yeah, you absolutely did not want to. I really had to convince you that it was necessary because we needed to figure out what we were dealing with. At this point, it was all theories, but you continued to be terrorized by the ghost. That you would see it, you would hear it, it would, you would throw things, you would hear things. And so I wanted to get to the bottom, if possible, of what it is, what you were encountering. And the only way to do that is by confronting it and by actually, conducting an investigation. And I thought, the easiest thing would be to go in there and just bring my camera and start off by seeing if we could capture anything on film. So I posed it as just a brief investigative foray, just a quick, dash in, dash out, take a picture or two, feel around if possible, and just kind of acclimate ourselves to what the room is, what's happening over there, and then go from there. But yes, you did take a lot of convincing.
You, at one point in time early on, expressed interest that I should kneel facing the closet door area and put my arms out. Voila. That became an interesting photo because, as people can see if you look very closely, my sweatshirt was very heavy material. The sleeves are blowing back. It's pushed in where my chest is, and the cardboard behind me is being bent back. So that was a fascinating moment. Why did you ask me to put my arms out like that? Because it did work. Yeah.
One of my earliest theories was that you were the focus point for this haunting, an entity, if you will. So my thought was that it wanted your attention. It called your name. It was in your space. It definitely was it wanted to interact with you. So I was trying to get you to assume a posture whereby you were inviting it, so to speak, and hands open. Seems like a nonverbal cue, but it's also non-threatening in a way towards the entity if that's a risk. Again, we didn't know what we were dealing with, and in some of these shows I had seen earlier on, I want to say it was probably That's Incredible, one of those investigative shows that dealt with paranormal subjects from time to time. I think that I saw a show where somebody had actually demonstrated doing something like that, whether they were feeling for energies or Reiki or whatever. I'm not positive, but it seemed to me that might be the best way to invite an interaction.
So can we call this the Ungar approach?
Sure, I like it. Trademark.
I think it's kind of cool. And Alan, you are working on a project I can't go into in detail right now, but you're talking about the concept of energies and spirit and things like that. What do you make? If you just saw someone with their hands out, focusing towards an area with the intent to connect, do you think that would be helpful, or do you think that would be something that might be a little risky to do?
Well, it depends. If you're seeking an interaction, I think that's obviously a way to spark something. In the same way, when we meet a person, we extend our hand as a handshake. If a ghost is a person, then they're going to recognize an extended hand in the same way. But not only that, what we have found through our experience is that the hands are kind of like an entry and outer point for our own personal energies. They can exit and enter our body through different ways, but they do so very naturally through our hands. and they are things. Their hands are tools, and they're very powerful. Our most powerful tools, perhaps. So they are, the ultimate way to welcome, but also the ultimate way to interact with the environment if you need to.
Very cool. And Mara, you had the the difficult task of trying to portray that moment. And please talk to me. I recall watching the film recently. It's so powerful. You even sometimes you shoot like below. Sometimes you really put us into the moment with the swirling lights. How did you come about? How did you develop the concept of how to show that? How does that work?
I think that one of the things I really admire in cinema is when, thank you for the great question, um, when a director, a DP, a set dresser, all these conceptual people will come together, whether there's a single auteur or many minds, they create a multi-layer approach to art so that it's a little bit more like the human experience. I think something that can be lacking in modern media, not always, but often, where we have HD or we have 4K and it's crystal clear, like this webcam that I'm under is like, I'm crystal clear, but my eyes aren't. The digital images, but my experience, my memories, your experiences during the haunting, Jeff's experiences, they include emotion. They include the rush of blood, the fear, and even in a physical or metaphysical sense, there was also the atmospheric of the ghost itself. What is it like to have that sort of chill in the room, the strange fogginess, the energy that it brought, along with the beauty of the Christmas lights. And so as far as multi-layered approaches went, it started with the idea of having some atmospheric in there, some smoke, making sure the light felt accurate to what you were describing and what Jeff had written in the journal notes, as far as this being like stepping into a different world almost when you stepped into that room. And then in addition to that, next layer up, you have the video cameras themselves and who's manning them, making sure that they're with the actors, that they're sort of a fly on the wall, but they're also really intimate with their eyes, with their hands. What are they doing? What are they feeling? Because I think that's how we experience things. We're very visceral creatures as opposed to observers from afar. We're very personal about how we do that. And I think the actors really brought that home as that next layer of talking with them, having them read, having them speak with you, with Jeff, and try to understand what it is to be fascinated, to be positive, but to be afraid, to be serious, to be terrified, to be trying to learn, to reach out, but with hesitation, where it's like, well, I'm reaching out, but I don't know. I don't want to bring something back. I think that the actors really did a beautiful job, Kyle Shea and Aaron Catter, in that scene of portraying you guys. I was so impressed by them on the day. I'll never forget being there. It was magical, that scene, scary, but beautiful also, I think, and especially with thanks to them. And our videographers, Carrie Lyon, did a great job. And yeah, it was a great challenge, but I think it was actually a really fun day of filming, to be honest.
Yeah, and I have to say, I mean, some of those scenes that were shot and the sets that were created were so real that I share this anecdote because it's a funny one. It's a little embarrassing, but there was a scene where they're having a party in the room, and one of the characters said, "Hey, Chris," meaning for Kyle, who's playing Chris, and like, yeah, oh, because it seemed so real to me. I responded as though I was there because I had been there and you had made it so I was there again. So it's a very, very powerful thing. And for folks out there who are looking to share their experiences, who are looking to share their ideas and maybe get some notoriety, the key isn't getting notoriety. It's doing what you love, sharing it with meaning, and then people will find value in that. I can't express enough to you. You listen to the people on the panel here tonight, and you hear the thoughts that go into every action, the concern, the consideration of every person, and the creativity is how to best share that so it makes the most sense for other people around. So please don't force things. Don't try to put things on Facebook and get 95 likes and hope that's the end. Develop your concepts, search for the answers, and try to develop coherent concepts and thoughts that can be applied beyond the self. And I think those are good things. And so there we have it. I put on the screen a couple seconds ago, Alma was talking about the hands, and Jeff and I began to feel these spheres of cold, these zones of cold. And I continued to use my hands as a device to find, to seek. And it was pretty powerful. And the Christmas lights, you can see a little bit above on the loft above me. And so it's kind of cool to back in the day. No one knew that those photographs would ever be seen beyond a few people, right? And it's funny to think that's not the case anymore, that many people do see those things. And Jeff, did you all, you often say, and this is true, that you didn't fully experience, you didn't see the ghost all the time, you didn't hear the ghost all the time, but something you did experience, and if I'm not mistaken, you felt some of the zones of cold.
Yeah, that was pretty incredible there. It, like, your hands seem to center. Our thoughts at the time was that the ghost itself, perhaps an orb-shaped object, which was reported in the room, this size, it seemed to correlate to that, the size of that object, the space between your hands. And when you did that, it created some kind of vortex between your hands that not only seemed to crackle with some kind of energy, but there was also a distinct temperature drop within that zone. So you could actually, by putting your hand in, you could actually feel that difference in temperature. There was a current there, like a wind, a breeze that seemed to be generated, a swirling sensation. And on occasion, there was actually little crackles or sparkles that would occur and dart off. And that was just fascinating. My assumption was that whatever energies we were dealing with, you could focus that through this holding your hands out this way, whether you were summoning the ghost or energies or entity to you, or you were creating something that facilitated that interaction. That remains to be discerned, but it was really cool.
That's fascinating. And as somebody who was uniquely involved in that process, it was nice to know someone else could experience what I was experiencing. There are a few things worse than experiencing something alone. That's so amazing. Like, I wish there was somebody else to see the sunset, or somebody else to watch this moment. And I guess I'm lucky to have this moment, but it deserves more than me to be a witness. And that was very gratifying that you were seeing and experiencing what was going on around me, because it didn't match what was supposed to happen in my brain. It's not supposed to go to college to have these things happen where there's sparkles from your hands and temperature drops and ghosts. It's supposed to be going out and being with your friends and learning and playing sports, and not what I signed up for. And so it's a very fascinating thing. And I just want to put the comment here that thank you, Barry. Yes, my own DVD of Please Talk With Me Will Never Gather Dust. Great work directing Mara. So yes, and I think that we all stand with you for that one, Barry. And so yeah, that's what happened. And I began to walk around the room and find these things. And at some point in time, I can't recall if you were there at the time, I saw it. I saw the ghost move, because when you took the photograph of me with my hands out, the flash startled the ghost, and it went right through me, terrifying. Later on, I think you mentioned it might be called something like cold tupping, that process. I remember that word, and then it was above the bed, shoot up the loft. And it's right there. And I said, Jeff, there it is, above the bed. And you said to me clearly, stoically, Chris, I don't see it. Where? I said, Jeff, above the dead thing is the ghost. What? The dead thing looking at us. Look, it's looking right at us. That's the ghost. It's right there looking at us. Chris, I don't see it. And you said to me, if you see it, take the camera, you take the picture. I guess your theory was that if I saw it might work. How was whether scientific or inspiration, whatever the thought process is, creative, how did you get to the point of saying, take the picture, you do it?
Yeah. That has to do with some of my readings early on. The work in Kirlian photography, for example, and some of the psychic research done in Russia, for example. It seemed that they could do remote viewing, or they could actually have energies imprint on an unexposed sheet of film through mind projection of some sort. So there's a transference, there's a connection, something about something about the research suggested that there was an interaction between the subject or the person who is experiencing the phenomenon, or the psychic, depending on how you want to define yourself, and whatever, and other forces. So it seemed to me that I clearly was not seeing it in that moment, which was somewhat of a disappointment for me and somewhat of a relief, honestly. But I wanted our chances to, I wanted to place the best bet I could. And since I had very, very limited amount of film available to me as a sophomore college student with very little money to my name at the time, I had one roll of film. Okay. And so I was very stingy about what I was going to take a picture of. And so again, and at the moment, all right, all the research in my mind, it's like research suggests that your best results will possibly be if Chris takes the picture. So that happened in an instant in my head, and I handed you the film or the camera, and then you took
reacted,
the picture.
I mean, just within a second or two, you made that suggestion, which looking back, I was still amazed by, because it worked. So I said, I'm gonna mess this up. I can't do this. You can do this. And so I lifted the I never used the camera before, and so I'm gonna mess it up. This is horrible, right? And I pointed at the figure. I saw the figure right through the lens, the viewfinder, and I'm just like, okay, and snap. I'm taking one amount. I took the picture, and off I ran. That was it, you know. And it was a while before the pictures were developed. I think right after that, you went on vacation with your family, and it might have been close to 3 weeks or maybe longer before the pictures were developed. Correct?
Yeah, like this was Thursday night. I believe Valentine's Day was on a Thursday. Yeah. We took the film there. We took about 6-7 photos during that session.
Right.
Next day, Friday, I had class. I went home for that weekend because I was invited to go on a trip to Walt Disney World, Land, Florida, whichever one that is. Talk about timing, right? So I was gone for a week there. I got back, and then I had to send the photos out. So I think I got them back probably 10 days later. I was, itching to take a look at them. But man, I was excited when I picked up that envelope from the drugstore.
Like? Walk us through that if you don't mind.
Yeah. I trudged uphill on a cold gray February day in Geneseo, and got my little packet there, with the photos in there. And man, I was super excited. So I walked to Milne Library, which has a view over the valley there and the big windows there. So I'm sitting there at the table, big table, wooden gray table, panoramic view of Geneseo, gray day, very cold out there, blustery. And I'm sitting down there. No one else is in the library. And I lay out the cards in front of me like tarot cards, the photos. And then I slowly flip them over one by one, trying to savor the moment of discovery, So I'm flipping them over. 1, nothing. 2, nothing. 3, there's Chris with his hands out. My stupid flash didn't sync. 4, another flash didn't sync. There's Chris doing something else, It was very frustrating as I got towards the end of that, 20 photos in the pack. And the first time through, I didn't see it. I didn't see that shot at the end. I mean, I saw it. I went through it quickly. There was your bed. There was your pillow with the Christ figure on it that your grandmother made for you. There was Bill Rogers with his poster there. There was the Super Pickle, of course. And I did not see the thing in the corner there, which is where you said it was, exactly where you said it was. I went through the cards again. I'm calling them cards. I went through the photo prints again. Yeah. And then it just jumped right out at me. And as soon as I got that, man, I just kind of like sat back. It felt like I was like, I really hope it is what I think it is. And I was in the library. Right behind me were the stacks. I went to look up a book on anatomy, Gray's Anatomy, one of those big, thick books on, that showed the human form and figure in all its glory. And then I matched up what I was seeing as a skeletal image to some of the sketches in the book. And my God, you could see it almost corresponding exactly. You got the pelvis there with the holes there. You got the spinal column. You got the shoulder blades. You got the rib cage. You got the clavicles up there. And in the actual full print, you can actually see almost a head. And the thing about it is, the head in the shadow is tilted in the same direction that you suggested the ghost was whenever you saw it. And so it absolutely corresponded to everything you described seeing yourself physically as a full-bloodied apparition, except it was back to you. So like the pelvis is reversed, the head is tilted in the opposite direction. That was fascinating to me, that we were looking at it, had turned away from the camera as if it was reacting to you holding the camera up towards it, or the flash. It did not like that, I don't think.
And I remember saying, look, it doesn't want to, has picture taken, it doesn't want to be seen, and I don't want to see it, we should destroy this. And your response was, we should not destroy this, correct?
Whoa. Let's not be hasty. Let's not be rash. No, I'm so cavalier about it now. But in the moment, I was like, I'm really hoping you don't want to do that, Chris, because this is an opportunity here that is unheard of. Just think of the questions we could ask if we are able to establish direct communications with this, because clearly it wants to talk to you.
Yes, and here's the full picture again. You can see where the little head tilt is there, and I guess the poster too. So fascinating. Now, this is the image, by the way, Jeff, that you shared with Alan Lewis, who was your high school friend. And I believe, if I'm correct, Alan, that is the image that made you think, okay, here's something. True?
True. I like to tell the story of William James, who was an American psychologist, a pioneer in the field, who did actually have an interest in the paranormal. And he studied mediums and people of that nature to see if there was any underlying truth to it. And he had a saying he was very fond of, which was that in order to prove that not all crows are black, you don't need to look at every single crow to see that they're all black. You just need to find one white crow. So, and by that he meant if he could find one authentic medium, one authentic, experience of a haunting, one authentic psychic phenomenon, then that kind of thing is possible in the world, and reality must. Explanation of reality must include that. So for me, hearing the story from Jeff, I was being convinced, and then he pulled the photograph out as he's relaying the story, and it just sealed the deal for me. And I have two questions. One for Jeff, I've never asked before, and one for Chris, I've never asked before. Jeff, do you think you would have been telling that story if you didn't have the photograph?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I don't think so. I mean, for me, it was about wanting to answer the question. So like yourself, I was looking for that white crow, and for me it was as well. In that moment, the haunting took on a different characteristic. Instead of something that Chris was experiencing, it became, oh my God, we actually have a haunting here. Okay. And that changed every parameter. That changed all the decisions we made from that point on as to how we deal with this, or what our theories are. So without that photograph early on in the investigation, you are correct, sir. That might have not been an easy sell for me, especially if I was I probably would not have been encouraged to share it as I did with you without that proof.
Right then.
Well, that comes later.
Don't destroy it, yes. I mean, me too, saying do it first. We all have that impulse at one point in time. That's fascinating. So if not for that photograph, Jeff, who took that photograph? I'm trying to think. Right? You might not have even decided to share this. So it's fascinating how it was your idea. I once again complied with your request, and it worked. Once again, that's how it usually worked. Jeff says something, I'm like, I'm not so sure. I do it, and it works. That was our working relationship.
And Chris, can I ask you this? Not specifically about that one ghost photo, but about the in some of the other pictures Jeff took, where we see you with your shirt. I don't know if you uploaded the one where you were holding the bookmark out. We see the expression on your face in these photos, and we know you were not anxious to go into the room. But from the expression on your face, I'm certain you felt nervous, but it seems like you're feeling intrigued by the process as well. Can you
Yeah,
share those photos, that one, and do you have the bookmark one where you're holding the bookmark
I
out?
don't have that one, but I have this one too.
Right. There's some. I know you're nervous here, but you look intrigued as well. I wonder if you could speak to that.
Yeah, I couldn't not be intrigued. People like to be right. That's just a fact. We like to know that we're right. Sometimes we're mistaken. And when we're mistaken, it can be a bad thing, right? It can damage us, our progress, our success. But there's something nice about being wrong and it actually helps. So your mistake didn't hurt anybody. And you learn from your mistake and you grew. So I'm in that room thinking I shouldn't be here. This is a bad idea. This is hard. What am I? I should be anyplace else. And then, as Jeff says, there's these zones, and then there's these energy surges and spark. I mean, it's real. It's real, and it's responding to me. I'm calling these things, and whatever this thing is, and it's coming to me. It's working. There's an unspoken non-verbal relationship occurring in that moment where it's responding to my actions. I have a limited control. That's cool. I had control at any point during the haunting, but it seemed to want to go where my hands were, and so for the first time in the haunting, I had a teeny bit of control in that moment, which gave me hope that maybe I could have more control later on. Ooh, that's interesting. But that's I never thought about that. But that's how that worked, you know. And yeah, I think I was amazed that, well, again, first he was experiencing it, so I'm happy. And also like, what is this? This is like Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory, where you float in that tube or you eat the candy off the trees. Like this can't be real. Much like how Beth felt when she saw the picture of the ghost. Like, nah, are you serious? I was living a fantastical, as Mara would suggest, moment that I knew wouldn't last forever, and I knew I had to like take it all in. So yeah, that was huge, and I never actually formulated those words of response before, but yeah, for a brief moment in time, I was able to actually safely interact, you know, and was a really cool thing for me, and I think that allowed me to go further with Jeff along the path of investigation. You know, so that's yeah, limited control. It's interesting how a lot of times we just don't analyze our own actions because we think we know what they mean. And here, just 38 years later, you ask a question, and I'm thinking, you know what? That's an interesting thing that did impact me in a way which I never even thought about. Affected my moves coming forward. That's interesting. And it's interesting how Mara in her film or you in your analysis can look back at what Jeff and I did and find these little grains of interest, of sparks of things that we didn't even, it's our second nature. We didn't even think to ask those questions. And yet it's an amazing thing. So Alan, you see this photograph and you decide what? I need to learn more.
Yeah. It was like, here's something, it's happening. This is a real phenomenon. Yeah, it was like a moment of revelation. It really was.
And Amar, you had a difficult time with this because we couldn't summon the ghost for the movie. It doesn't work that way. Okay, and we're going to film the ghost on this date at 8:30. Get the ghost in the green room and have him ready to go. I'll give the cue. That ghost is here, and go. You can't do that. And the poster that I had on the wall at that point in time was out of print. It was nowhere. I think I saw one copy in damaged form for like $14,000. There's just no way you want to get a broken poster for $14,000. So you're very creative. You remember what you did with that?
Sure, I definitely remember. It's a great thing when you can find a solution that is just as good as the real thing because it is the real thing. You were a great artist in your own right during the college times and, of course, today as well. And you had done different series of art homages to different heroes of yours, and that included the great runner Bill Rogers. And you did, I think it was an etching, was it?
Yep.
That you did of him with the laurel leaves after having won. And it's this great black and white piece that looks regal. It also has just a little bit of eeriness to it. And since it was a Bill Rogers poster there in the ghost photo, what could be more perfect than using your actual artwork? So that's what we did. We blew that up nice and big and put that there. And I think it's perfectly appropriate.
And it probably is actually more powerful than what was there. I mean, the running poster is nice, but that was just like an image of like, you know, like a laurel wreath and victory at the same time, a little haunting in its perspective. So you know, I almost wish that had been on the wall when the haunting had occurred. And so there's the picture. I didn't like it, but it was helpful. Jeff had a piece of concrete evidence that he could point to, not just in quotes, just eyewitness accounts and things like that. And so those photographs cemented, I think, for many people, the actuality of the haunting beyond just words. And I think that's important in today's day and age. You like to see and know. They always joke about things. I want to see pictures, it didn't happen. Photos doesn't happen, kind of thing. People want to see with their eyes what we're seeing. And then, the haunting would eventually come to a close. And years later, and I think I walked away from some aspects of it because it just scared me. I don't want to talk about negative things. At some point in time, Jeff, you walked away from some of these things, right? Your own life to pursue their interests and try to understand what's happening with you. And we at that point in time didn't know Mara yet in the picture. She was a young girl running around the ground round with her mom in Newburgh, New York. Alan kept the flame lit in his mind and his writings. He recorded things and analyzed things and wrote, and he was intrigued by what all these things meant. And he then eventually would go and try to find some of the witnesses to the haunting. As far as the photograph goes, negatives are important. Negatives are important because they show a lack of tampering. Negatives, especially in 35mm format, are huge when analyzing data and evidence. And I remember, Alan, you had sent a photograph off to Dale Kazmarek of the Ghost Future Society. Before we get to that, though, Jeff, you had the negative, correct? And I remember you telling me you burned it.
Yeah, about 97. I had become increasingly uncomfortable with the legacy of the haunting. It had, I had failed in my own mind to make any sense of it. I had hoped to be able to make some sense of it. I felt like I was uniquely positioned to, tell the story, perhaps, or glean some insight, and nothing really gelled for me. And not only that, it was creating problems in my personal life. I had a marriage that was dissolving. It was, and the occult, the paranormal, became a sticking point. And at one point, I needed to make a dramatic pledge to, put the past behind me. And I felt like break a soul tie, as they say.
Yes.
And so this was a way of just kind of like doing that, destroying the past. And I grabbed whatever I had available in that moment, which included 7 journal rings, 7 journals that I had of experiences, not only in Geneseo, but for years after, because we had many experiences. I had journaled, dream journals, paranormal adventures. So I'm there ripping out the pages. I'm burning those. I mean, the rings are melting in the fireplace and whatnot. And I really believed that I destroyed my journal notes, the originals, including the negative, the ghost negative. And so it is an utter shock to me that any remnant survives, as in surviving evidence, the title of your book originally, Chris, remember?
Well, if you think about it, in 1997, you were was in 1985, destroy it. So ironically, like 13, 14 years later, you've come to the conclusion that I came to initially. Let's just get rid of all the stuff. Different reasons, right? But it's interesting how both of us at one point in time said, no, we're done with this. Don't want it. But you always said the story will tell itself. And there's an eerie, amazing aspect of that because it has. And so about 3 years ago, Alan comes across a discovery. Fill us in.
I was in the process of moving and was going through some items I'd had in storage in the basement. And there were things I hadn't looked at in some time. They were in boxes. And I, in the course of unpacking in my new place where I had room for everything to be taken out, in a storage box, I found a number of things that were highly relevant, including Jeff's original handwritten notes.
Wow. I remember that was an amazing revelation that they existed. We had photocopies, and photocopies are cool, but the real deal with the imprint of the lead onto the paper that was touched and shared, nothing like it. And we all gathered together at your apartment at that point in time, and we read through those notes, and it was fascinating. And I love those things I put out of my head. I just moved beyond. It was fascinating to live through those moments again as they occurred. And I remember we all thought, gee, we're just missing one thing now. If only we had the negatives for that ghost photograph. Well, we got the note. It'd be the holy grail of holy grails. And I don't usually push for evidence. I remember telling them brand new, it's got to be somewhere. It can't end this way. We can't go forever not having this one thing. And so I actually nudged a bit, and you all thought this is a good idea. Maybe we should try, because what the heck? You all in your own way thought Mara believed it could be there somehow. Alan thought you got to pursue this. Jeff was like, I told you, I burned them. I'm so sorry. But we pursued, and what happened? I think Alan reached out, right, to a friend of ours named David Flass, and what happened there?
I remember you actually suggested the interaction. We were trying to think of different places it might be, and just out of the blue, you said you should check with Dave.
Yeah.
And I remember sending him a message and saying something along the lines of, this might be almost exact words. Dave, do you have any idea by chance of what might have happened to the original ghost negative? And within the same day, I don't remember how much later, he sent back a message that said, you mean this negative? And had a picture of a strip of negatives, not just one, but a strip of negatives, including the original ghost photo and other photos I don't know if you even looked at since the original haunting at all.
Nope. And,
photos that I'd never seen the other photos on that strip.
Fascinating.
And he didn't know how he had that exactly. But he found
it's almost like it became present in his home. And here's an image of the negative film strip being held, and you can see the far left image. I'm holding the bookmark to see if the ghost will react to that, and then the two people move back and forth. There's a photograph of me banging over my desk. There's one of me looking very frightened. Over here, Jeff, stand here. Totally petrified by the balloons. And the final fourth photograph to the right would be the actual original negative of the ghost skeleton image photo. And so, boy, to see that was like gold to me. It was literally the holy grail. And so we became complete. And it's interesting to note that in the past 2.5 years, this has happened. So all the years of talking about the haunting, of sharing it, of the TV shows, the books, everything, we actually got more information restored to us in the past 2.5 years than we had in the previous 34 years. And so the wealth of information it's just amazing to share. I feel blessed about that. And now we can go back and look about reworking books and adjusting films and all these things to kind of put the cap on what we have in a very positive, meaningful way. And again, I don't mean to be obscure about things, but next year you're going to see Jeff and I for sure on your screens in a very big fashion. And that's in part possible because of the work that Mara did on her film to allow us to share, the work that Alan did finding these valuable pieces of evidence and documentation, and what Jeff and I went through back in Erie Hall in that cold, dark winter of 1985. It's really an amazing thing. So go back to you, Jeff. I know we're running short on time. In fact, we're a little bit over, but listen, to have 3 people with me like this, like yourselves on in this moment, I want to bring every second out of this because time keeps moving. And eventually there'll be 3 of us left and then 2 of us. And so while all 4 of us are here in this positive, healthy way, I want to really record this and keep this for posterity, this recording, what we're doing here. Jeff, looking back, you had said early on, and you never claimed to be a prophet, never claimed to be, some kind of, a force out there who will direct the future. But you always said, from a person who was often skeptical, a person who often didn't want to involve himself in the metaphysical, just thought it'd be a cool concept. You're very structured. You're very determined to keep emotions in check. But you always said, it's a story that wants to be told. Why did you say that?
I can trace that concept back very distinctly to visiting Mara and the set for the first time. When she called me up originally and said, hey, I'm Mara and we're making a film of the experiences in Geneseo, and she invited me up there and she says, we wanted to do a script based on your journal notes, okay? And I'm like, okay, great, my journal notes. I had been so successful in putting those behind me,
right,
that I didn't know exactly what she was talking about in that moment. And, as I sit here now explaining this to you, it's just absolutely baffling to me. And I really can't understand my thought process that would ignore or would forget that kind of thing. But, I just played along and I'm like, that was fun. I think I'm ready to get back into it now. Things had changed. I was at a different point in my life, whatnot. And this looked like something that needed to be done because like you said, the story is something I thought was important still. And if I didn't tell it, somebody needed to tell it. And in that way, the story would tell itself. Anyway, nothing cemented that idea until when I showed up on the set and Mara handed me a packet of photocopies of my journal notes, and she just sat back and she wanted to observe me reading these and interacting with these for the first time in what,
were you good friends?
25 years. This is like the second time I've met her. I talked to her maybe twice on the phone.
Okay,
it was the first time. And so she, we're on the set that she had built this shrine to C2D1. She's making a film based on my journal notes, and she was introducing me to my own journal notes for the first time in 25 years. And I didn't recognize them at first. They were photocopies. And I'm flipping through them, and I'm like, oh, my God. I mean, that flood of both recognition, but not understanding how this was possible. Because like I said, I thought I destroyed these. And here they were in front of me. Yes, in photocopy form, but yet they existed. Okay. Despite my effort to destroy the past, despite my denial of the experiences that we had later, and so that made me a believer in the idea that the story is a story that wants to be told. And Mara was the one to do it. She said it. She set the course.
I think it's amazing. Alan, you wrote to Dale Kaczmarek, as you mentioned, in Chicago, Illinois, back in the early 90s, the Ghost Research Society. What were you trying to do back then? What was the goal? And actually, what came from that?
I was at the local library, and I was looking in the reference section for anything to do with the paranormal. And in a encyclopedia about the paranormal, I found listed in there the concept that at the Ghost Research Society, they would analyze ghost photographs. Wow. And very often, say, well, this photograph is faked. This photograph, we don't see anything remarkable about, and sometimes would say, oh, we cannot find any evidence of fakery in this photograph. It seems to be genuine. And this was a service they performed for free. So I remember talking to you about it. You were all in favor of it. So we sent him our photographs. And he responded very, very positively and gave us a written statement that if we ever, published a book, he said, just include, my credentials and, you can take this statement. And I think we found out later that he at some point started a website and put his best photographs he'd found over the years. Right. And unbeknownst to us, he was using your photograph on that website for years and years and years and getting huge responses to it.
Across the world, Czechoslovakia, Japan. So, and in fact, it's interesting because Bill Rogers, the runner who won the Boston New York Marathon, who's my running hero, whose poster was in the wall where I took a picture of the ghost, his daughter, Erica, was in Japan working on horror stories and had heard and seen the picture, heard about the haunting. And when we reached out to see if we can get a poster from him to use for the set, he said, yeah, my daughter's talked about this. And I couldn't believe that my running hero knew about my experience. I thought, that's such an amazing serendipity. And again, these things keep happening over and over again where you think, how is that possible? And it almost demands that you think to yourself, it's in some way meant to be. It almost demands some type of aspect of fate to it or necessity that goes against conventional wisdom of saying free will and chaos, entropy in the environment. So very fascinating to me. And Mara, you had the challenge that you met in full force of trying to capture the essence of this haunting in a period of 2 hours on film. And in the third anniversary edition, for 1 hour. So going into this, it must have been overwhelming. At what point did you think to yourself, this is going to work?
Oh, well, what an interesting question. Thank you. I'm going to take a beat because I don't think I've considered that. This is going to work. I remember different things that are important to note here. First, I remember thinking this is a story that works. So before we started making the film, I remember thinking this is worthwhile. Speaking with William J. Edwards, the producer, C2 Productions, Mason, and amazing person, talented guy. I think he was the one who held on to some of those photocopies, probably initially made by Alan himself, but had made them, around to Bill, William J. Edwards. And, you and I talked, Chris, after doing the mod, and I was learning about those things, and it just had that ring of, I don't want to use the word legend because that suggests it didn't happen, but it's like when things are legendary and it just becomes this part of the zeitgeist, it becomes a part of a cultural truth. It just had that ring to it for me. So it's like, it must work. It is working. It's already resonating in that way.
Right.
With regard to the film, it is a challenge, right? To look at something so profound, so intimate for you guys, and important to the paranormal field, and say how to do that accurately, because there's really no point in making a movie about anything unless there's some sort of gravitas behind it. Why add to more media? There's so many shows, there's so many movies over the course of time. You might as well just go enjoy a nice day in the park if you're not going to do something right, because it's not easy to make a film. It's gratifying, it's not easy. I don't recommend it unless you've got something to say. So I remember we shot the first version of the film over in Goshen, and we had some good things in there, some good scripting, some good angles, some great actors, lots of great input. But I didn't necessarily feel like that was capturing the full spirit of it. And I think we all agreed that there was so much value there, but it wasn't quite it. And I think for me, the pivot point, if I can be candid, was in realizing that I needed to be, this sounds egotistical, and it's really against my nature to think of it this way, but I moved in roles from being sort of a kind of like an acting director, like a line director, to being an administrator, an actual director, more hands-on with regard to set dressing, more hands-on with regard to helping select the cast, more hands-on with what camera angles we would do and things like that. And I knew that my love for it would push me to suffer and it would be worth it. You know what I mean? That I wouldn't be distracted by breaks or pizza or people needing to wear shorts in the shower. Like I would forge through those things because I knew it needed to be great, despite, the cost that it might take, because those dividends that you give out to everybody else, hopefully if you try your best and do all that you can to honor the work, then that's going to be worth it. And I think that when I felt like I could give everything to it, to be allowed to do that and to allow myself to do that, then I thought, okay, I can get out of the way of it and it's going to be amazing.
It's, if you think about it, each one of us in our own way did some sacrificing here, give ourselves in some way selflessly, and you can't really teach that. There has to be a choice that a person makes, either being inspired by somebody else or something that they learned in their childhood, or maybe something inside them as a person. And one of the things, Mara, you mentioned in your creation of this film was that the friendships are so important. I know that Jeff has talked about that. Alan's talked about that. And we've all been friends mutually for at least 20 years, sometimes more. And, in an ever-changing world, we seem to be changing jobs, changing perspectives, changing sports teams, changing houses, and sometimes our friends. And yet here we are decades later, a testimony to not the haunting per se, but the facts that got us through the haunting, helped us to research the haunting and share the haunting inevitably, which is a really nice thing. So, if you're out there, folks, and you really have something you want to say and you want to share and you think it needs to be heard, if you can, walk in the footsteps of my friends here who gave of themselves, who believed beyond themselves sometimes, who challenged their own limitations because they believed it was the right thing to do for the concept, for themselves, and people they loved. And that's a really cool thing. I want to thank you all for staying an extra few minutes beyond. This is a first, but I didn't want to in any way cut this short, and so people can have this. And I really believe that as time goes by, people can look back at this particular episode and see, gee, what are these people doing and how they do it, and maybe we can take a piece of that for ourselves and make the same thing happen in some similar way. And I always say, if it's true and it helps say it, and all three of you have believed something that was true and it helped, and you said it. And I think that if things keep happening that are supposed to happen, you'll be hearing more from all four of us in the near future, maybe in a slightly different way, but we'll be out there hopefully. And if something happens, please know, Alan, Jeff, Mara, I love you. I love you. You're great people. I'm thankful you're in my life. I cannot imagine me living my life without any of you in it. And and I hope that the folks that like the Ghost Boy and follow me around and my lectures and things, and I appreciate that, also appreciate you to the same degree, because without any of you, there is no me in this capacity. Oh, thank you. All the hearts. Melissa Ann, I want to make sure I put this comment here. Great show tonight. Never tiring of hearing this great group talking about your experiences. Thank you as always for sharing. She and her sister are such amazingly creative and intelligent people. They really are. And they've shared with me a theory that they've been working on regarding the identity of Thomas Boyd, about the Masonic connection, about the flashing clock 916. And if I can get them to come on, I'll have them on a show in the near future, talk about what it is that they've been discussing and researching. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. And I'm hoping they will allow themselves to come on here and share the views, because I think that would be nice. And I'll see if I can get Bill Edwards at the same time. Bill Edwards is a 30 degree Mason, and he also has some of the background. It's a big, great show. I think if I can somehow coerce them into coming on. Barry, thank you for our guests as well. Alan, Mara, Jeff, I appreciate it. And thank you, Vince. We'll end it there. And so, my friends, thank you so much. I can never repay you. I'm grateful to have you in my life. And I suppose on that note, maybe we should bid everyone adieu. Good night, everybody.
Oh, thank you, Alan.
This has been Turn to Gold on BB3 TV.